Hello, readers! Welcome to the third episode of Reading in the Middle. I am your host, Anisha Jeffries, and today we have an exceptional guest, Ruth Chan. Ruth is an incredibly talented illustrator and author known for her diverse range of work, from heartfelt comics to captivating children's books. Her work has been featured in the New York Times and Cup of Joe, also with top publishers like HarperCollins, Macmillan, Simon & Schuster, Disney-Hyperion, and Abrams. But Ruth's journey is even more inspiring. Before she began illustrating full-time, Ruth spent her teens in China and dedicated over a decade to working with youth and families in underserved communities, a testament to her deep commitment to social causes. A proud Canadian, Ruth lives and works in New York City with her husband, daughter, and their adorable dog, Leroy. Today, we have the privilege of delving into Ruth's creative process and discussing her highly anticipated upcoming graphic novel memoir, Uprooted. This promises to be a conversation brimming with creativity, inspiration, and heart. Enjoy! Hi, Ruth. How are you today?
I am great. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this book finally, even though you and I have talked about it technically before. I'm just very excited.
Are you, excitement is like, it's getting a lot of buzz as well. And I know it comes out this month. Can you believe it's September already?
No, I was just saying that this morning I said, oh my gosh, August is over. It's fall. This is it.
Yeah, this is it. And so one of the things that I want to speak to you about regarding your graphic novel memoir is New Beginnings. So, in your memoir, you talk about, or you write about, and illustrate your personal experiences of displacement and cultural identity. How do you approach sharing such an intimate aspects of your life with a broader audience, and what were the challenges and rewards of doing so?
Yeah, I think with memoir, it's always a little bit complicated because it's true story. It's everything that happened. And so, as much as I'd like to be a fiction writer about my life, there are things that I can't necessarily change. But I think within that, and not just in this book, Uprooted, but I think in all the work that I do, whether it's picture books or comics or this graphic novel, I really strive to create a sense of like vulnerability and authenticity in my work. And so when we talk about, sharing personal experiences and intimate aspects of my life, I like to think of it as just an opportunity for readers to connect. The more real, the more authentic, the more specific, I think the more readers are able to engage and fully, not just connect, but like really find some sort of like emotional response to it, right? Everybody has a story. Everybody's story is important to tell. And, me just telling my story is not really just about me, right? It's about all the others who have felt or experienced displacement or cultural confusion or anything like that. But yeah, there are challenges and there are rewards, right? So in terms of challenges, I think starting out, I was a little bit nervous about how my family and friends would feel regarding how I portray them in the book, right? Because memoir, it's really about how I remember things, how things felt to me, things that were true to me. And that doesn't necessarily always reflect positively on others and how they see themselves. But luckily, everybody loved it. It's a very like sweet book. I don't think there's any there's no like villain. Everybody's sort of in the book is just like figuring things out, right? Not just me, but my parents and my friends were all figuring things out. And I think they actually really, in the end, like appreciated being portrayed in the book in like a real way, like not perfect, but authentic, right? And I think, one really wonderful thing that came out of that is, seeing my family read the book and just kind of being able to honor my family and family history in this very concrete way, and seeing how much that meant to them has been like the most incredible reward. No matter what happens with this book, I think being able to give that to my family and my child and my daughter's children, like, I think it's just amazing. Yeah.
How did he feel?
He actually, he was like, why am I in this book more? And I'm like, because you didn't move to Hong Kong with us. But he actually he liked that. I captured his clothing very accurately. And he actually just told me the other week, he's like, oh, I read it again. And, the parts where we said goodbye to him and the parts when he comes back to Hong Kong, he was like tearing up. So, yeah, that was nice to hear my big brother saying that.
Yes, just like you said, the part where he left he left you the baseball card. That was nice, and like you mentioned before, having those experiences of moving to someplace different, meeting new friends, having friends that you thought were your friends, and then they're not speaking to you, and feeling isolated. That hits home with a lot of people. So, yes, I know people, especially adults like myself, it will take us back in time to when we were younger as well. Just meeting new family members, that gets overwhelming. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, like, oh, here, go here with your cousins. Have a seat.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, okay,
terrifying. Yeah, exactly.
I've really enjoyed the part where you have the talk with your father. I just thought that was beautiful. That you and your dad had moments where, there was a part where you thought maybe you're too young for it, but your father was like, no, you're never going to age out of something like this to happen.
Yeah, we actually, yeah, exactly. It's so funny you say like we're never too old for it, because we actually still do it now, just in like a different way. My dad lives in Toronto now, and I'm in New York City. But every so often he'll write an email, and the subject line is always talk to talk. And it's something that he's thinking about. And I think that's so amazing that, 30 years later, we're still doing it, like a little bit different. He doesn't lie on the ground next to my bed anymore, but we're still able to, share our stories and what we're thinking about. And it still feels like such a safe space. So I feel so blessed to have that with my dad.
And also, another part in your book that I liked was that your mom, she was like living her best life. She was like going out with her sisters, and she was just on the phone. She was kicking back, and you're feeling like, oh, okay, she's having fun. I still feel out of place. But the moment where it gets to a point where you verbalize your frustrations with your mom, with your dad, they're sitting at home with KFC, and you're like, I'm not fine. I'm it's, Bonnie's not speaking to you, Claudia's not there. And then it took a moment for them to say, you know what, we apologize for not, thinking about, your feelings, because your mom wants you to do better in school. She wants you to be class president. I mean, these, and I just got here. So those dynamics where everybody can relate to that, because, when you're a kid, you can't talk back to your parents. I wouldn't write it, but there are times when you just get frustrated and it builds up and you just let out and you're just frustrated. So, I thought that these pieces in your memoir really resonate because it captured a moment in time where, all this was a change and it was a new beginning. And then how do you cope, right? And so also there's humor, right? There's tons of humor, which is a very, very important element in Uprooted. So helping you to navigate the serious themes that we spoke about. Can you discuss how you used humor in the narrative and how you balanced it with more emotional aspects of the memoir?
Yeah. It's funny. I couldn't help it. I couldn't help but have humor in the book. I think there's always humor in everything that I make, even if I try not to make it funny. And so, it just naturally kind of got in there. I think there's two things with humor, right? One is that I think humor is like this natural, crucial, beautiful thing in life. That is necessary in the happy times, but also in the really hard times. And so I think that, as hard as the transition was for me to move to Hong Kong, start a whole new life, learn a quote unquote new language, I think there were still a lot of moments that can be humorous. And I think there's such a gift in being able to sort of like laugh at yourself sometimes. Especially when, you're feeling insecure and you're not sure what's going on, where you belong. A little bit of joy in that humor goes a long way. And I think the second thing, in putting the humor in this book, as I was writing it, I felt myself, I was laughing so much, recalling so many of the scenes that had happened. I'm like, okay, if I'm still laughing about this 30 years later, like how funny would it be for the actual young readers to read this? Like, I hope that's funny to them because, oh man, it's still hilarious to me now. And even, when I shared this with Bonnie and Claudia and I are still best friends. And so when I shared it with them, they were like, yeah. And so they were like, oh my God, I totally forgot about this moment. And we were just laughing. So I think it's just a natural part of how I live life, I guess.
That's very important. And I'm so happy to hear that because I did read at the end. Well, you know what? I'm not trying to spoil it for our listeners, but it is also great to hear that you and Bonnie and Claudia still have that friendship, and I always say that because, it could be like, maybe you may not talk in like 5 years, but then you pick up the phone and you're right back to, talk. So you never missed a beat.
Yep.
And so, can you, because also you illustrated this, which I love your illustrations. Because you wrote this and you illustrated this. Can you share a little bit behind the scenes insight of how Uprooted came together? And were you there? Were there moments of doubt, discovering, or moments of discovering during your creative process? And how did you push through to complete your project?
Yeah. Oh, man. I thought I was prepared for making a graphic novel, and traditionally I've made picture books. And yeah, I thought I was prepared, and boy, was I not prepared. It's such a big project, and it's so overwhelming, not just in terms of length and work and how much it takes to illustrate, but I think because it was memoir, it took a lot of sort of like emotional digging and a lot of time researching. I talked a lot with my parents and my friends to see what they remembered. I went through all of my old school notes. I read my old diary, which was very cringy. But, it was a very long process. Originally, I had wanted to make a book about the story of my father's birth. And this is included in the book, but it's not the main story anymore, where my father, for the listeners, my father was born while fleeing their home during the Sino-Japanese War and, barely survived. And my dad's family had to really figure out, basically, yeah, how to survive. But as I was kind of writing that story, I realized, oh, there are a lot of parallels to, and thus the title of the book of being uprooted. So, from me moving from Canada to Hong Kong, obviously very different circumstances and a very different level of severity. But, the story of my father's birth was basically told to my cousins and me constantly growing up, either by my grandmother or my aunt. And so I feel like the story being told to us imbued a lot of the values that my grandmother was trying to impress upon us. And so it naturally came out that my own story sort of paralleled, the same values and things that I had learned from my father's story, right? And some of those things being, perseverance and having courage and having patience when faced with challenges. But once I had that story together, it was like writing the script took a long time. And I'm so used to picture books where it's like, you have 32 pages, make it as succinct as possible. And here I'm like, I have a whole narrative arc, right? First, I have to separate it from be an autobiography. I don't need to include every detail of my life. This is memoir. There's a story. There's a theme. And then so to curate that story and that theme, to write it all out, to sketch it all out. No, not even to thumbnail, then sketch, then draw, and then color. Like it was it was a journey. But the funny thing is that the themes of perseverance and courage and patience that my grandmother taught us and that I learned, that's in the book. I'm like, wait a second. I'm carrying out these same things and practicing these same things as I'm making this graphic novel, right? Like perseverance, just gotta keep going. Have the courage. You can make this book. And it's like, you can make it good. And just having patience with myself, like, okay, today I didn't get as much done as I wanted to, but that's okay. Like, this is a long project. We're in it for the long haul, with, the goal in mind to make a book. So it was kind of a neat full circle thing that happened.
So did you ever think about having someone else illustrate it or doing all of your research? And did it become like so time consuming where you're like, oh, do I have time to illustrate this?
I didn't, because it felt like it's such a personal project. And so, drawing people is not my strong suit. A lot of my picture books, I draw animals. So it felt doubly long, but it felt really important to me to make this work my own, right? And to portray my family and my friends the way that I see them, from the outfits to how they talk, everything. We did hire a colorist to help color the book because it was just too much work. And so, we had a lovely colorist, Nicolo, who did a first pass of the coloring, and then I got to go in and basically tweak everything to be exactly how I wanted to.
Yeah, you can really tell, like the parts where you feel isolated, like when you're looking for someone to talk to, how the colors change, where it's very it draws you in. And so that really was, I really like how the colors, you could tell, like sometimes like blue on one part, or also there's muted colors for just emotional aspects, right?
Yes.
And that brings, that really does kind of give the reader gives them your experience of what you're going through, But I think having the presence of visuals impacts the story very well.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because that is something that I really wanted to be sure came through. With the color that you mentioned, like the big, the blow up that she has at the climax of the book. I think it's the most vibrant, like red. And I don't like reds, but I'm like, we're going to use red and orange on this. And even just, I think there's so much that can be communicated, whether emotionally or humor-wise, just visually. One thing that I really enjoyed the most about making this book was all the facial expressions, and how much that conveys without having to say anything or have any text to convey that. And I think that's so fun for readers too, where it's like, oh, I know that look. I know how she's feeling.
I definitely knew how you were feeling. And it took me, I always mention to authors about what I'm talking about when I'm reading the book. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember the feeling when you're talking to a friend and they totally ignore you. Oh my goodness, I have the feeling that.
Yes.
And then I liked how you went up to Bonnie. See, that was something I could never do, but you went up to her and said, hey, what's going on? How come you're avoiding me? She told you.
And I remember that that took so much courage. It's because it's still not in my personality to do that. So even looking back, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I did that. And it all worked out,
It did. And you guys hugged. I'm not going to spoil. Listeners, I am not spoiling anything, okay? I'm just talking.
Not at all.
I'm not spoiling anything. But
we're just discussing.
So resilience in new beginnings, and Uprooted portrays themes of resilience when you're starting in a new place. How did you explore this theme in your memoir, and what message do you hope young readers facing similar challenges will take away from your story?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. I think resilience was just naturally, part of the story and part of, the story of my grandparents and the birth of my father, that literally is about resilience, and to have it translate a little bit to my own story when I was 13 and how, I was able to find resilience in challenges. I think it was a very accessible theme to have, and I think a really important one, right? And I think a lot of the reason why I wanted to have that theme is because I wanted readers to think about how do you face challenges, right? And I think a lot of times in this country, the mentality is to prioritize comfort, right? And to really want to avoid things that are too hard, either to talk about or think about or feel, and to find other ways that feel better, right? If something's too hard, like, okay, let's just leave it and go to something else. Not saying that that's necessarily the wrong thing to do, but I think there's so much to be said for learning how to manage and overcome our own challenges, right? And so that's one thing I really hope that readers kind of get out of this, is that you have it in you to get through this challenge. It may feel impossible. It may feel overwhelming. It may feel like there's no way out, but there is, right? And there's so much that you will learn about your own strength, your own resilience, and realizing that you're probably able to do more than you think you can, and that the challenge is not to avoid the challenge; it's to hit that challenge head on and overcome it. Yeah,
and you feel great when you overcome it, and
yeah, exactly.
It wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I made it through.
There's a part where your mother says that she has to tell you something and you're bracing yourself. And there's a piece where you're thinking like how she's going to tell you, as opposed to what actually happens. Right. So it's something like that, like you're bracing yourself for the worst. And it's not that bad. Right. So yeah.
It's not that bad.
Mm-mm.
Yes, exactly.
I spoke when I talked to Tony Weaver Jr. About his graphic novel memoir, Weirdo. We talked about cultural identity and representation. And in your book, you explore the complexities of cultural identity and the experiences of feeling caught between different worlds. How important is it for you to authenticate these experiences? And what do you hope readers from diverse backgrounds will take away from your portrayal of cultural identity in Uprooted?
Oh, yeah. I think it's so important. I think at the end of the day, and I think I said this in our panel too, right? I think that at the end of the day, all people, any human being, they desire to be seen and heard, right? As they are, whether it's like their cultural identity or their, and anything. I think everybody wants to and deserves to be seen and heard. And so, in Weirdo and also in Uprooted, they're very specific stories, and they're very real stories. And I think the more that we see of these, the better, right? Because one, any reader that can identify with cultural identity or in this case, like cultural confusion or displacement, if they can connect and realize that other people are experiencing something similar, not necessarily exactly the same, right? But something similar, like that makes them feel seen and heard. That makes them feel less alone. And that is one hope that I hope that this book does, is helps readers feel less alone in whatever they're going through. And I feel like the more, going back to your first question about vulnerability and authenticity, the more real the stories that are being shared are, the more people are going to connect with them, either as something similar that they went through or something that they're learning for the first time. And it's like, how is that a bad thing that people are learning about each other and connecting with each other? Like that's the beauty of what books does. And so, not many people have gone through the experience that I have, but I think a lot of readers can connect with that idea of wanting to belong, wanting to feel seen and heard, having a fight with their friend or not really speaking their parents' language. So I hope that idea of not feeling so alone is one huge thing that I'm always thinking about when I'm making books or comics or anything, really.
And there's such an honesty with Uprooted, that you share. And I think readers will appreciate that, because we can relate. And the thing is that everyone has a family, right? People have siblings. Although I'm an only child, but people have siblings and they can relate to that. People have, friends. So it's the honesty that you put forth in Uprooted where I think will resonate with readers. And that's what really struck me reading it. And I read it like 3, 4, 5 times, more times. I did because I enjoyed, because I found certain things in the illustrations that I didn't see before. So I always like finding, I call them little Easter eggs in there. Just when in the cafeteria where the kids are eating and then someone's like laying down because they're so full, or I'm like, it's funny. Or the two couples.
I'm so glad.
Holding hands. I like to look like all the way around. I just like to capture everything in an illustration, even in a picture.
I'm so glad you caught those, because I feel like those little details are so fun to me in picture books and in graphic novels, even, like, just to make it even that much more authentic, right? Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, we have like the kids playing basketball and one's really bad, all those little details.
That makes it so good and comforting too, because I just always want to share some of those with our readers. And I definitely will be doing that when your book comes out. So what advice would you offer to aspiring authors and illustrators who want to tell their own personal stories, especially in a graphic novel format? What would you say to keep? What should they keep in mind when balancing narrative and visual storytelling? That was a mouthful. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And I was like, oh, what did I do and what did I wish I knew? I mean, I think the first thing for any project is to do the research. And in this case, for me, I read so many graphic novels and graphic memoirs for different ages just to kind of see how people laid their books out and how they did pacing. And then, figuring out how do I want to do those things for me, right? Do I want to do panels like, a very traditional way? Do I want to break the panels and trying to figure out like, yes, what are the basics of graphic memoirs that I need to include and how, in what style do I want to do that for myself? And then I think especially with memoir, the one thing I had such a challenge with was, being able to delineate between autobiography versus memoir, right? Because it's my life. Those few couple of months that are covered under Uprooted, I remember all the details, right? All the stories, all the boys that I liked, all the outfits that I wore. Every single aspect of my three-dimensional life is in my memory. But I can't put that all in a book. I'm not going to fit it in 288 pages. And people are going to get so bored, right? Like nobody wants to know every single detail. And so it took a lot of work to sort of parse out the things that were relevant and things that were, interesting and important. And so I think one thing I would say is to figure out a theme first. So if you want to do memoir, you don't have to have it about your whole life. Pick a portion, pick a theme. So for mine, it was like being uprooted and belonging. So what are the things that happened in my life during that time that relate to that theme? And those are the scenes that I pulled out. And that really helped to like put the story together, have a story arc, make it engaging, have it seamless and as one piece. And I think the last thing would be, and this is for any creative project, I think is, not to be afraid to tweak or change things even last minute. Don't be afraid to throw things out. Because you're trying to make it the best that you can. And a lot of times that means that something we thought that was great and would work, it's not working anymore. Or there's like there was a scene in the book that I really wanted to keep in there. And we just didn't have room. And so I had to prioritize the scenes and that one didn't make the cut and it still hurts my heart. But, now that I see their book, it's like, no, I'm glad I was able to let go of that for the sake of the whole book.
Oh, yeah. I would love to see what that was.
Well, I can tell you what it was. Do you want me to? Okay. I'm not going to talk.
I don't want to. I'll really.
Because then you'll be heartbroken.
Yeah, I will. So I don't. But thank you. So Ruth, my last question for you is, as Uprooted is about to be released, what are you most excited about? And are there any future projects or themes you're particularly eager to explore next? And how do you see your work evolving after Uprooted?
It's such a good question, because now that it's finally coming out, it's like, oh, yeah, what is next? But I am really excited for the book to come out. I think, it's such a long journey, and to finally have it out in 10 days feels kind of surreal. Mostly, I'm really excited for my family and friends to see it. My Hong Kong friends, we're all still like a nice group of friends, my graduating class. And a bunch of them have done like a bulk order from a bookstore here in New York so that I can personalize and sign and then get shipped off to them. Which, yeah, and they're going to read it to their kids. And then I'm going to Hong Kong next year, and I'm probably going to get to present to Bonnie's kids' school. So, like, her kids are going to see their mom in a book. Like, those, like, real-life connections I'm so excited for, because it's just lived in my brain and in my memory for so long. I know, it's going to be so fun. I'm going to embarrass Bonnie so badly. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you won't. This is just going to be, it's like a rock star right there. That's nice.
Yeah, she's a celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and
Oh, no, you go on.
I was going to say for future projects, I'm actually working on a second graphic memoir, also middle grade, also set in Hong Kong. And the joke is that when I sent a draft to my parents, there's a lot of my father and my relationship in Uprooted with Talk to Talk and things like that. So my mom was joking. She's like, when are you going to make a book about me? And I'm like, well, Mom, be careful what you wish for, because the second memoir is going to be a lot about the relationship between my mother and me. And I've grown up with, she has OCD. And so that is the theme is not mental illness. It's like a side character. It's going to really be about like, what it means to be a good daughter. And within that, we're going to have a little bit about, managing mental illness within the family and things like that. My mom is super psyched. So now that I'm telling you and people are going to hear this, I'm going to have to make this book now. There's no way out of it.
Please. No way out of it. No, please. And then this is just a side question. Marcus, do you still talk to Marcus?
Oh, no. I did look him up. So he was in the German switch stream. And so of the school, we had an English stream and a German stream. And so the German stream is all, predominantly German Swiss speaking. So I think he's in Germany now. And no, we never really, we haven't talked in a long time. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Ruth, well, I want to thank you so much for letting me interview you for your upcoming graphic novel, Uprooted. And I wish you the best. This is going to be like awesome, because definitely it's wonderful, and I will be promoting it, and I know our readers will love it because, like I said, I definitely did. I definitely love it. And I want to thank you and your family, because, without their story, there wouldn't be an Uprooted, right? And your story.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
yeah,
it's really wonderful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Anisha. This was so much fun. And it was so fun to talk about the book and to see you again. And thank you for such thoughtful questions too. I think it was really exciting for me to get to talk about and answer your questions. So
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this Reading in the Middle episode. We hope you enjoyed our interview with the incredible Ruth Chan and learned more about the creative journey behind her upcoming graphic novel memoir, Uprooted. The book will be available on September 10th, so get your copy. To stay updated on Ruth's work, visit her website at oldtruth.com. And of course, stay tuned for more great interviews and book discussions on Reading in the Middle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your fellow book lovers, and visit our blog at readinginthemiddle.blog. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep reading and stay inspired.